Good morning, everyone. From wherever you're joining, my name is Philip Ayazika, and thank you so much for joining this Civic Tech Innovation Network masterclass. I work as a director of programs at Policy, and I'm going to be leading on this session. Again, it's not a lecture. Whereas they're using the term masterclass, it's not a lecture, so feel free to chip in and jump in with any additions that you might have or questions that you might have as we move along. Now, Policy is a civic tech organization. We are based in East Africa. And by the way, we are the East African Civic Tech Innovation Network ambassadors. Nati, I don't know if we still have that position, but yes.
Yes,
we
you do.
represent the network in the East African region, as do other member organizations like GoVote in Nigeria and many other in different regions that we work with. I think I'll give Nati an option to, kind of opportunity to talk about who are the other region ambassadors. Now, Policy functions at the intersection of data design and technology, and our work focuses on research on data and technology and how this can re-engineer social change, but also focusing on how can citizens, especially African citizens, take back control of their data, but also reimagine new ways of technology ownership. Now, in this era where we have lots of conversations on data governance, we thought that as an organization that has done some work on data governance, but also that has been making efforts to recenter citizens and data subjects in the data ecosystem to see that they have power and control over their data, we thought that we would have a conversation with every one of you to understand what are some of the issues that are coming up when we talk about data or even data governance. But also for today, we are going to be just headlining one of a card game that we've developed as an organization called Where's My Data, which is a physical card game for many of you that have played Matatu. I don't know what Matatu is in English, but I think Matatu is Matatu. I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of, playing cards as a group, whether it's a social event, or whether you're with friends. So we thought we'd take the same approach to, come up with a game on data protection and privacy for people to learn about these issues in a much more fun way, because we've realized that game-based learning is one of the approaches that now are being adopted, but also the future of learning. And as someone who has a background in education, I'm interested in always, finding out what are some of the unconventional approaches that we can get to disseminate information. Of course, I'm not going to echo the very sad statement that people keep pushing around of, hide information from people and by probably putting it in books. That's not the reason we are doing this, but we also recognize that not many of us probably get the time or even have the interest of reading, these many PDFs that we always create as civil society organizations. So for me, in a way, I feel like that's us, excluding certain people that might not be in position to read, even beyond ourselves, but people probably that don't speak English, that have not gone to school. And, these are the people that we want to have information on issues to do with data. So that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about today. So this game is supposed to spark conversations on issues of data privacy and protection, but also to check you and kind of help you put in place checks and balances on where do you put your data, who do you give your data, which apps do you give access to your data, but also what are some of the data leakage points in both the physical and digital realms that we survive in. COVID-19, of course, kind of highlighted how data is very important, but also how data was being used at the time for COVID tracing and the many other issues. And we saw a lot of people giving out their data, which is a practice that has continued even post-COVID. But even beyond COVID, we know that many of you download apps. You have a lot of apps on your phones and a lot of digital services that keep giving access to your data. But the idea is that you should be able to stop and probably reflect before giving out the much data that you give out, but also to put you in a position where you're able to ask questions about who is collecting your data, for what reason, for how long, and the very many other reasons that we're going to be talking about today. So the idea is that, we can work towards a user-centric data ecosystem. Now, I'm going to start with this opener. When we talk about data protection and privacy, there's quite a lot of things in here. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cough. But to begin with, of course, what is data? Many of us know what data is. Of course, your name, there's what we call personally identifying information and non-identifying information or data. So most of the times when you're having conversations like this, we're talking about personal data. And personal data could include your name, your email address, where you stay, and all this information that can identify you, your social security number, your NSSF number, anything that can literally identify you, your national ID number, your passport number, that's personal information. And many of us at the times, especially for us on the African continent, where many of the countries don't have very well streamlined e-governance or e-government services. We find that most of the times you're required to replicate the same information and provide it to the different service providing entities, whether that's immigration to get a passport, whether that's the entity that is in charge of issuing out national IDs, whether you're opening up a bank account, you're literally giving out the same information, But do these people have the right safeguards? But before we get to that, I just wanted us to begin by reflecting on what the difference is between data protection and privacy. I can't see who is on the call. I would have, just prompted someone to tell us probably what do they think is the difference between these two concepts. Anyone, any takers? What do you think is the difference between data protection and privacy? And I'm not looking for the technical definition. I'm simply looking for your understanding of it, and of course, the image I've put on the screen already gives it away. So if anyone is able to interpret it, I would appreciate it. Anyone? Please, if you refuse, I'm going to call names. I know some people on this call. But yeah, what do you think is the difference between data privacy and protection? Okay, seems like there's no one who wants to take it. I'll not call out any names for purposes of time. Excuse me. So on the screen, you can see two images. Both of these images is a person, a human being, or people trying to protect themselves from the rain. Now, in this context, the rain would be the threats, the digital threats that might come our way, or the data threats, or the threats that we are prone to when we are using digital spaces. Now, in both concepts, you can see that both people have umbrellas. I don't know if this person in yellow, I don't know if that's an umbrella for the person in yellow, but I know that both of them are trying to protect something. But the difference, the idea is that the phones or the devices that they are holding, that's the data. In this context, if you're talking about data protection and privacy, the context here is that that's the data that they're trying to protect. But the difference between privacy and protection is that for the first image, for the gentleman putting on, or for the person putting on the orange cloak, that whereas they have an umbrella on top of their heads or protecting them, the rain or the threats can still access their phones. So there are chances that their phone or their data could still be hurt or be accessed or damaged or misused, whatever you want to use. So that's data protection. Now, in the realm of digital security, for those that are probably familiar with digital security, and you would say that if I have my device and I have a password, that is protection, that someone can't simply access my protection. So, but then privacy goes one step ahead to put extra protection to your device. Then that would be maybe two-factor authentication in the cases where you're trying to get into your account, that you have a password, which is protection for your data, but then there's also two-factor authentication, or those many elements that might be in place to add an additional layer of security to your data. Now, that's the difference between protection and privacy, that protection is a very first layer of it, but then privacy goes an extra mile. And I'm going to continue and explain it with this. So you can see that in the second image, this person goes ahead to provide an extra layer of protection to their phone or to their data. You can also see that the umbrella or the material that they're using is even a bit opaque, or it's tinted, that even when you are to peep, you wouldn't probably read what data is on their phone. Now, to go just beyond this, there's an example that I like using of all of us we stay in houses, of course. And in your house, you have windows and doors, those fittings, the window fittings and the door fittings. That is protection now in that essence. But then why do you go ahead and probably buy blinds or buy curtains? It's simply because you're trying to add an extra layer of protection, which is privacy. So that's the difference between data protection and privacy. And I hope that I can kind of unveil it as we move forward. Now, why does privacy matter? I've been in several rooms where people have said, oh, but I have nothing to hide, and this is, of course, from the direction of data, for example, digital security. You find some people that have phones that are not locked, or people that don't even care where they're putting their data and how much information they're sharing online. Even some of us may be culprits, you put in your children's information on the internet where they go to school. Again, it's your choice. But the difference with being aware of data protection and privacy and what could go wrong is that you have information and enough data to inform the decisions that you make. If you're to post images of your children or your family, would you then go ahead and probably limit the number of people that can see these images, or do you simply go ahead and just put them out? But I've had a lot of people throw around statements like, oh, I have nothing to hide. Nati, I don't know if you can still hear me. Please let me know if you've lost me.
I can still hear you.
Okay. I've had people throw around statements, oh, like, I have nothing to hide. I don't care about privacy. But I normally tell people that if you say you don't care about privacy because you have nothing to hide, it is simply probably like saying, I don't care about freedom of speech because I have nothing to say. So the real essence is that all of us have something to hide in this age and era. Even when the word is not hiding, but there's certain reservations that you're supposed to have, because if you give out too much, you're putting yourself in danger. But why does data protection and privacy matter? So in the age that we're living in, which is digitized, is every second of our digital lives is being transformed into computable data that is even being monetized by especially big tech companies, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more as we head. So what does this mean is that it means that as users or the data subjects who give our information to governments, big tech companies, even the civil society organizations that you keep giving your data to in the name of research or in the name of attending this event, sometimes they're monetizing this data in some sense, and they're getting benefit out of it, but you are not getting benefit out of it as a data subject. So in that way, we face a systematic deprivation of control over this data. And I've even been in rooms where people are asking questions of who is the rightful owner of this data. Because, for example, Facebook is saying that, in the quid pro quo concept, Facebook is saying that, or even the many tech companies are saying that if their platforms didn't exist, your data would probably have no value. I don't know if that's right. So you find that many times we are simply exchanging our data just for the sake of probably connecting with our friends and communicating. But should that be sufficient for companies that are making $1 million out of our data? Should we get some benefit out of it? So that is the whole concept of control, but also being able to regulate and say, okay, I can only give this much data to Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram, and I can reserve this. So that kind of systemic deprivation of control over this data, sometimes we are deprived of that control because you even never know at what point you're giving out data, because sometimes the data is beyond even your identifying information. But every time you're using these platforms, you're creating a digital footprint, which is data that you're giving out to these platforms. And then there's a rise in digitization, which has brought both opportunities and risks. And I don't mean to be pessimist, but I'm going to kind of dwell a bit on the risks that might come from giving out so much data. And of course, these risks may include stalking, harassment, data misuse, surveillance, among others. Individuals are also increasingly sharing personal information online, which I've just talked about, making the concept of data protection and privacy crucial to help us protect ourselves against breaches, scams, and data misuse. Now, many of you have seen people that have posted. A couple of months ago, I saw someone posting their Visa, bank card details on Twitter, and then people were rushing to even procure or buy material using these banking details. So, if you're giving out that much data without knowing, you're opening up yourselves to misuse, to loss, to con men, and many other things could go wrong. Whereas there's data protection policies and laws that exist to ensure that our personal data is protected and handled securely, we are also cognizant that many of the African nations, and I just have a statistic here that 37 out of the 54 African countries, only 37 have enacted data protection laws. And I think I have this statistic from about March or April of this month. I don't know how many more, but this is just a number. 37 is a good number, but there's more that needs to be done. But also, you know that only 15 people or 15 nations across the African continent have ratified the Malabo Convention on Cybersecurity and Data Protection. Now, this state of affair, of course, amidst the very many or the low levels of awareness on data protection, only justifies the need for interactive learning approaches like this game and the many trainings that many of the civil society organizations are doing to help raise awareness and ensure that more people understand the risks to their personal data, but also that they're in position to ask questions to their data processors or people that collect their data, and hold even governments and tell them to provide more protections for their data. To continue on why protection and privacy matters, privacy is a human right. Beyond the things I've talked about, it is a human right. We have the UDHR, the Universal Declaration that provides for it as a fundamental human right. In Uganda, for example, and I know in many of your constitutions, you have articles that provide for the protection of the right to privacy. In Uganda, we also have sectoral privacy regulations. We have sectors that have gone ahead to regulate the use of data, collection of data, but also issues of privacy, and the very many data protection laws that I've talked about. Okay, so Nati, please let me know if there's any question in the chat section, and I'll be able to attend to it. So where is our data right now? We can talk about, I'm not giving out any data, or I'm a private person, but sometimes you give out data without even knowing. Now, I got some examples here that I think this is where your data might be, or my data might be. And this speaks to our context as African people, because there's still a lot of practices that are going on because of lack of regulation, but also implementation of the regulations that we have that go unchecked. Even as civil society, we can only do so much when it comes to raising awareness and going to court and holding certain entities accountable legally. But still, there's a lot of practices that need to be highlighted to you to understand where your data is. From Uganda, there's a lot of mobile loan apps, and I know even in your countries. These are fintech channels that are providing people instant cash, but also we have fintechs like mobile money. I think in Kenya it's M-Pesa, and there are very many other, mobile money options that you're using. These are people that collect your data. We've had cases of you get a mobile loan. Yesterday I was speaking to someone who got a mobile loan, and they received their mother received an SMS telling them to notify the person that got the loan to pay up in time. Now, you don't provide this data to this loan company, but somehow they have it. Why? Because in the apps that you sign for and download in your phones, these apps, you give them extra access or extra rights to certain data in your phone. If you woke up one day and they're telling you the weather app wants access to your contacts, why would you grant the weather app access to your contacts? Same thing happens. So you should be able to check that if you're downloading this app and probably trying to access financial services, what rights are you giving it access to? Are you giving it access to your camera? Are you giving it access to your contacts? Are you giving it access to the many private information that are in your phone? Because, for example, in Uganda, we've even seen certain loan apps accessing people's galleries, and they've used non-consensual intimate sharing of images, or what many people call revenge pornography, or leaking people's nudes as a way of demanding for their money that these people are keeping. So if you give a loan app access to your photos, it is on you. It's as simple as that. Then we have a lot of recycled packaging that has our data. I don't know if Irene is on this call. Irene is our ED, and just a few months ago, I was I think we were in Tanzania, and I had an upset, and we drove to the nearest pharmacy, and I bought a bit of tablets. Now, the packaging that this pharmacy had used, I realized that it was someone's loan details from a certain bank, because many of you collect data that is personally identifying, and for you, once you finish using this information that is on papers, you simply deposit in the rubbish pits or in the bins that are in your offices, and then certain people pick up on this information and recycle it. They use it for paper bags, and there are many other details. It's also not news that for people that enjoy street food, that you walk up to a Rolex stall or to buy mandazi and chapati, and you'll find that this is someone's probably HIV results, or this is someone's school certificate. So that is also places where our data is. So again, this calls us as data collectors to be extra careful on how much information, and how we handle people's information when collected. There's also a lot of biometric apps. I think there was WorldCoin. Many of you, I'm sure you've seen WorldCoin in your countries, trying to enroll people onto their platform and scanning their iris and collecting a lot of biometric information. That is also your personal data. We've seen a lot of face editing apps. This picture shows Obama as a woman, Obama as an aged person, and many of you have used these face apps. You're giving out your data because your face is a biometric, your fingerprint is a biometric. That is all data, beyond the name and email address that we've talked about. That is all data. Now, there's what we call metadata. I wanted to show this. I hope I can. So there's what we call metadata. Now, every time you upload an image to your Instagram or to your Facebook, there's data that is held in that image. And I'm going to give an example. Please let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see the online EXIF data viewer
Yes.
that I've opened?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'm going to try and upload an image that I took a couple of months ago when I was in Thailand. And we were having dinner with a couple of friends. Now, when you upload an image like this on your Instagram or on your Facebook, there's what we call metadata. Metadata, just like, I don't know how to explain metadata, but it's just that inside information, inside data that can be identifying. Right. Someone is saying some colleagues at campus sold their data for $10. And in the moment, of course, that might look like a lot of money. I'm also cognizant that, of course, people need this money because of the many challenges that we're going through, but at what risk, So I've uploaded this image that I took of I don't remember what this food was. I don't know if it was a starter or something, but you can see that there's data that is embedded there. The name of the image, the file type, when it was shocking is that they even show you the location where you took this image from. Now, if you're a person that likes sharing your photos and you're taking photos of your kids when they're at school, when they're at home, if someone is not meaning well, they could literally track where your house is and could cause harm. Again, I said, forgive me, I'm being a bit pessimistic and scary, but this is the reality of the life we are living in. Before you know, someone is tracking you, is surveilling you, is coming to your home without actually knowing. You're snapping yourself with this much money or with this new phone, and someone could literally come to your house simply by checking the metadata that is in the image. So this image shows exactly where I was in Chiang Mai, Thailand, where I took dinner and where exactly I took the photo. But also it goes ahead to show what phone I used, what model it was, what lens, exposure, and all these very many details. Now, if someone is meaning harm, that is also data that you're giving out online. And then lastly, we have what we call health diary apps. Many of us use these apps, whether it's for your mental health, whether it's for your fitness, whether it's to track your menstrual days, especially for the ladies. We've had cases of apps. I won't mention names, but Flow, I've mentioned, that have been in cases and legal suits for sharing people's personal data with third-party apps. But we've also had cases of where people have been imprisoned because their abortion data, for example, was accessed through apps like this, and they've gone to prison simply because of that. So even for the feminist technology or femtech, tools that are supposed to help us go through our life and track our health, you're giving out lots of data. So that's where our data might be, and very many other areas. Now, but which data do these apps have access to? They have access to your phone number, identification details, transaction histories. If you go to the face editing apps, they have your facial images and usage patterns. They have your exercise routines, dietary habits, health goals, location devices, and timestamps, fingerprints and facial scans, personal information from original documents. This is all data that we are giving out on a daily basis. There's also something we call the data governance challenge. Of course, someone would say, but I mean, it's just data. There's no big deal, or I need these apps and these very many places that I put my data at to navigate life. But there's what we call a data governance challenge that I think many of you have heard about, that as a data subject, it is your right to privacy or protection. But also in there, there's connotations of power, control, and benefit. That as the owner of data, you should have the power to decide who has access to your data and what they do with it, you know? But we know that we live in an ecosystem where there's big power imbalances. I'm going to try and finish up in the 5 minutes so that we can also try and play the game. There's power imbalances between us as data stakeholders. So you have cases where the government agencies collect your data, but then they have more power over the data because then they decide how they use it and what they use it for and how long they keep it. But also you have civil society organizations that might have control over the data that they collect from, quote unquote, their beneficiaries. So there's that unequal power imbalance when it comes to our data that is supposed to be our identifying information. And then, of course, this leads to unequal access to data, but also decision-making power. And then there's the element of control that I think I've talked about a bit in the quid pro quo concept on who has control over your data. It is not right for you to probably want to delete an app and someone says you can't access your data. Or if I wrote to maybe Facebook or these many applications that we give our information and someone is saying maybe, unfortunately, you can't have access to that data. We've had cases like those, which speaks to control, you know. As a data subject, I should be able to control who has access to my data, where my data is, but I should also be able to probably recall it, you know, when it comes to consent, because in other realms we've said consent can be withdrawn. So if I give a certain entity my data, I should be able to withdraw it fully and they shouldn't have access to it. But this continues to be a challenge on who has control over your data. And I've talked about the quid pro quo concept of, your data doesn't make any sense or it's not valuable if it wouldn't be valuable if our platforms didn't exist. You know, we've had scenarios like those. And then lastly, who benefits from the data collection and the use of this data? Now, for the people that are saying, it's not a big deal, you're giving these multi-billion companies your data and they're using it to make a lot of money while you still struggle to even get basic services and services that, simple services, sorry, someone just walked into. So that kind of concept of, as a data subject, you should be able to get some kind of benefit from the data that you give out to these many. And now this is the data governance challenge that you continue to grapple with, that we continue to talk to big tech companies about, we continue to talk to governments about, on who has access to our data, what power can I have, but also how do I benefit from the data, much data that I'm giving out. To move on, what are some of the principles of data protection and privacy as I wrap up? One is accountability, that as a data collector or as a data person that has people's data, which is many of us here, because I think many of us civil society organizations that are on this call, we collect data. Whether you're in academia, whether you're civil society, we collect data. You should be accountable to the data subject for the personal data you've collected or the one you're processing. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So the first principle is accountability, and I've talked about it. The second one is lawful, that as a data subject, you should collect and process data lawfully and legally. Then there's a concept of minimality, on someone shouldn't collect, data that they're not going to use. So, for example, you should be able to ask questions when someone is asking you probably to provide the number of children that you have and where you stay. Some of us simply give out this information without even asking, what people are going to use this data for. So the principle of minimality, when you talk about the principles of data protection and privacy, speaks to collecting, processing, using or holding only the adequate, relevant, and not excessive unnecessary data. So you have the right to refuse if you feel like someone is asking for too much information, even when it's a government entity. Of course, that has limitations to it, but you should be able to ask questions on why someone is collecting this much data. And then the other one is retention. You're also required as a data collector, and I'm speaking to us as data collectors, but also as data subjects, you should retain personal data for a specific period that is authorized by the law and required by the law. Otherwise, you can't keep people's data for ages and ages without a clear reason. And then the last three is quality. You should ensure quality of the personal data you collect. Then transparency, ensure transparency and participation. Many of us collect data for certain reasons, probably to report to donors, but then you realize you have a side gig, or you have this Instagram shop, a thrift shop that where you're selling clothes and bags, and you say, but oh, I have this many numbers of Ugandans. So you simply pick that information and take it and use it for your email marketing or SMS marketing. Now that goes against transparency. You only use the data for the reason that you've collected it. And many of us, of course, most of the times are caught on the other side of that. And of course, observing security of the personal data to prevent abuse, loss, and risks. Now, on to why we are here. So Pollic has developed a game called Where's My Data, on top of the very many other games that we've developed over the years, in our quest to allow or empower African people to understand where exactly is their place when it comes to technology policy dialogue, right? You cannot advocate or take back control over your, take back power of your data without actually knowing how these things work. And it's important for us to find alternative means or, interactive ways for people to understand these issues and these concepts beyond keeping them in the PDFs and the reports that we write. So as an organization, we've set out to look for ways where we can, make these concepts as easy as possible for people to understand. So we've developed this game called Where's My Data, which is an interactive card game designed to raise awareness about data privacy and security. The game revolves around navigating through a spectrum of data privacy and security challenges to reach the end of a track. It aims to educate players about potential risks and the best practices related to safeguarding their personal data. Nati, as I'm going through this, I think you should get ready to launch the game. The few games cards games that we put together. So the objective is that as a player, you're supposed to make headway by successfully navigating through these challenges and making wise choices. So we have a bit of curated games and scenarios that are day-to-day that all of us find every day. So the idea is that you're supposed to find the best option, to choose the best option, and that should inform probably the next encounter that you have when you're in such a scenario. For example, on the screen, I don't know if it's large enough, we have the scenario of public USB charging. They're telling you that you, not just a second, I think you've launched it before.
All right.
I don't know. Yeah. So they're saying public USB charging, you connect your device to public USB charging port. What precautions do you take? Use a USB data blocker, connect without any precautions, avoid public charging altogether. Now, this is a scenario that they're presenting to you. The task is that you're supposed to choose what would you do in this scenario. And then you turn the card around. The card will show you the best option that you should have chosen. And in this case, they're saying use a USB data blocker. Because again, some people might argue that probably avoid public charging, but we know that it is inevitable. Sometimes you're caught up and you really need to charge publicly at the airport or somewhere, and you have to charge without taking precautions. So the best option is using a USB data blocker. And the lesson here is that using a USB data blocker helps safeguard your device and sensitive information from potential risks associated with data exchange on public charging networks. The techies and experts will tell you that even through public charging, especially for people that simply charge with USBs and you don't need a port or a charger head, that could be a medium through which someone accesses your data, And then the last slide is how to play before Nati launches a few scenarios that we put up in place. So this is a game that you can play in a group. You can play with your family. You can play in a training. You can play at work to just learn about the best practices on data protection. So each player is supposed to be drawing a card that presents a real-life data privacy challenge, and then they're supposed to tackle that challenge and then make a decision, after which then they compare their answer that they've chosen to the recommended action on the back of the card. Ideally, the goal is to just make progress through this game while making wise choices to protect your data. It can be competitive, so you could decide that every time we're playing, we're scoring cards. You'll also find that there's certain cards that will make you lose points or gain points. For example, you'll find that there are cards that talk about you publicly or you overshare information or you share private information on social media. In that case, then you lose points, if you're in the game. So that's how competitive the game is. Unless there's any questions, I would want us to get into just a few. So because this is a physical card game, I was trying to find a way through which you can play and kind of get the experience. Because I'm not, of course, able to physically hand over cards to you, but I think I'm seeing some people that were data first. Many of you got a chance to get some of these cards. So Nati, first and foremost, is there any question from anyone? Is that clear on how to play the game? Nati is going to be to put up a poll, and you're going to be tasked to tackle some of these scenarios and challenges to see what would you do in such a scenario, and then we can come back and discuss in the next few minutes. Can we go live, Nati? Please let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer it. Okay, so on the screen, there's 5 questions that you're going to have to answer through a poll. Now, we had to, of course, to transform it into a poll because, again, like I've said, the cards are physical. Question number 1 is you receive an email with a link from an unknown sender requesting your personal information. It could be your bank account or your passport or, asking you to pay money. What do? The task is that you answer these questions, and we see, who has gotten things right, who has gotten things wrong, and then we can have just a bit of discussion. I don't know how many minutes you're going to use for this.
I can give everybody at least 2 minutes to go through it.
Okay.
Is that too long? Okay, 2 minutes is good then.
Okay, as we play that, I'll go through the comments in the chat section. Okay, Barasa said, imagine my colleagues at campus sold their iris to Bitcoin for $10 US. And then Irene is saying, if we reflect on this, the company has a higher duty of care not to exploit and extract from Africans. So we can see here, our laws and governments have not put enough measures to ensure we're not exploited. Your colleagues at campus just needed some money. Unfortunately, they were exploited. Yeah. So you know that I think in Kenya, there was a notice that was passed banning the WorldCoin, because I think it's WorldCoin that was going around, malls and campuses and public spaces, scanning people's iris, which I've said is also personal data. Kara says some apps do not offer the option to delete your account or personal information. This limitation might be buried in the terms and conditions, which you often agree to without thoroughly reading. This is spot on. Thank you, Melissa, for mentioning this. Now, sometimes the trick is that the terms and conditions are very long that you'll just have to click accept because not many of us can be able to read those things. But as a person who has an extra level of care and an understanding of data protection, I think even before you download these apps and accept, you should be able to, come up with some certain format, establish whether these apps provide enough protection for your data. And the piece of work that we've embarked on as an organization through the World Women's Rights Organization previously was to come up with an evaluation framework on apps that have enough protection when it comes to things like this, when it comes to data, that before you download a certain app, you should be able to go somewhere and understand whether this app provides enough protection. And if it doesn't, this framework also provides you alternatives that you can probably use. So if you want to use maybe Zoom, but then you go to the framework and realize that it doesn't provide you enough protection, then recommend to you alternative apps that you can use that probably provide you enough, protection for your data and things on but fire. Thank you. Maureen, Nati, I don't know if you're able to see how many people have filled. Then I think we should be able to see the.
Yes, I'm able to see, but I'm just seeing that other people haven't gone yet. So just giving them
good people, if you could just simply take the quiz that is on the screen. Maureen is saying it's really scary when telecom companies are involved in data extraction on behalf of the state. This is spot on, Maureen. And these are some of the issues that we are seeing in the data ecosystem that, of course, many people have mentioned that, I keep receiving these phone calls from these con men. Where are they getting my information? And of course, there's been allegations that sometimes the telco companies have, are infiltrated. But sometimes it's even goes back to us as people. Where are you putting your data, Maureen? Or any other person. When you move into a hotel, those many places that have those books where we're supposed to write our personal phone numbers. Do you ever ask yourself that, okay, if this pamphlet or this book gets full, where does this information go? What if that is the information that maybe the security person is picking up and selling to marketers? Because if this book has 20,000 contacts of Ugandans, and I've just opened up a business or a betting company that I need to market, I literally have gold here that I could literally sell to a person that is interested in this information. So again, this even goes back to things like know where you're putting your personal phone number. If it is not necessary, give them a pseudo, a fake phone number. If you think it's not advisable. I could literally get in trouble for saying that, but probably if I'm entering a bar or if I'm entering someplace And I feel like they don't need to have this much information of me. I have the right to give them pseudo information, even a pseudo phone number or even a pseudonym. It's simply me trying to have control of my information. But again, minimality talks about it, the principle of minimality, that you should have the opportunity to, decide or not to give out too much information. So yeah, Nati, I'm going to ask that you project for us the outcomes of the poll, and then we can get into a bit of discussion.
Let me see if we can do that. I'm not sure if we can, but let me try that.
Okay, I think if we cannot do it, I'm just going to go ahead and project the other cards. I think we can just simply choose the questions that we projected here and see what probably would have been the best option.
Okay.
I thought that we would see the results. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen.
I think we can share results. It does give us the option to share here, but I can see your screen, Philip.
Okay, do you want us to first see those results?
Let me try that.
Okay. 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 On your screens, I hope you can see. So on question number 1, you receive an email with a link from an unknown sender requesting your personal information. What do? People have said ignore and delete. Click on the link. No one said click on the link. Majority of the people said ignore and delete. Others said report it as spam. I want to believe both of those options are correct. We are going to just revisit and see which is correct. The other is receive an email notification from a popular online store where you've shopped before. The email states that their database has been breached. What do? Click the link and change your password as I think I've said ignore the email assuming it's a phishing website and directly change your password there. Third one is you just downloaded an app. As you open the app for the first time, it prompts you to grant various permissions. I think I've talked about this, including access to your camera, location, contacts, and microphone. This happens for us many times. And I've used the example of loan apps. Do you need to give a loan app access to your camera? Why? What do you do then in that situation? Grant all requested permission. This is not right. Snapchat or an app that you're going to be using to take pictures, but some apps you don't necessarily have to grant them access to all these things. And sometimes for us, we just say allow without checking again. And that's why we find challenges like, this loan app has accessed my image, or they have contacted this person in my contact list because you granted them access to your contact list. And then lastly, let me go through, you connect your device. I think we've discussed this. Thank you, Nati, for sharing. Let me just share my screen. And then we can see what are option number 1 was, remind me, Nati, I'm not looking at my screen. Public USB sharing.
Receive an email, the link from an unknown sender requesting your personal information. What do you do?
Okay, I think that's phishing. I think many of us are familiar with phishing because I think this is one of the concepts that many of the digital security trainings focus. So the right option to do when you receive an email with a link from an unknown sender requesting your personal information, what do? There's 3 options here. So the best thing to do is ignore and delete, right? Ignore and delete. Phishing emails try to trick you into revealing your personal information. Clicking on the link providing information can lead to identity theft. Ignoring and deleting the email is the safest as it avoids the threat. However, someone might argue and say report it as spam. That is also a right option. But I think the option that is not right here is clicking on the link, because many of you have seen those ads of KFC is making 100 years, click here to win a bucket of chicken, or iPhone is turning 100 years, click here to win iPhone 14. The moment you click, you're giving out them access to your data. But also sometimes you've seen people saying, I was hacked, because they simply clicked on a certain link. So the lesson here is being cautious when you receive unsolicited emails requesting your personal information. What other option can I go to?
The second question here is, sorry, were you asking about the other options? I was going through the questions here.
The second question.
All right, cool. You receive an email notification from a popular online store where you've shopped before. Yeah.
Got it. So there was also this, you receive an email notification from a popular online store where you've shopped before, and they're telling you they've been compromised. It's only right that they do inform you. sometimes it might be not the right person contacting you or not the official store contacting you. So whereas this is a good practice for them to notify you, sometimes it might be a scam that they're trying to get access to your information. So what do? The right option is visit the official online store. So do not click on the link that is in the email. But if you had shopped from maybe Mr. Price or Walmart or something, whatever store that you shop from, you might want to just go to the official store and change your password from there. So there's very many other scenarios that we have here. So the idea is that every time you get the right option, you get more points. That's the form. So, but there's cards like this, for example, that talk about that you'll pick randomly, and it says that a backup you regularly backup important files to an external hard drive, you gain extra 2 points. But also there are cards that you'll choose, and then you lose points. Yeah, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much. I'm open to any questions. Yeah. Anything that stands out for you? Any questions that you might have about the game? Of course, unfortunately, we're not able to provide the games, but we're trying to get them as online as early as soon as possible. So you should be able to order, for example, organizations that are doing trainings that need some of them, you should be able to order them online and then they can be shipped to you. Beyond these games, there are other games that we've developed as an organization because we do a lot of gamification work. We have the digital safety game. Let me just paste it in the chat section here. Which is due for update, we know, and you're working on that. And now the digital safety game is a game that you can play again to learn about digital safety and security in a much more fun way, especially if you're doing trainings, if you're at work, or even when you're with your family. We know that now many of us who are parents, for example, you have young kids that are on the internet always. These are even things that they might be interested in to know what to do and what not to do. Then we have another game called Choose Your Own Fake News, which focuses on misinformation and disinformation. It presents to you case scenarios on how misinformation spreads. It has case scenarios on COVID misinformation, election misinformation. It helps you understand what role might you be playing when it comes to spreading wrong information, but also what can you do about it. So those are some of the other games that we've developed. Thank you so much. Is there any questions for me? Or any additions? I know I've seen a lot of experts on the call that also do this similar work. Feel free to unmute yourself and say something. Okay, I think there's no questions, but I hope that this has been a valuable session to you. I want to hand over to you, back to you, Nati.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for today's masterclass. I know some of you joined the previous masterclass. We'll be having another one in the month of September. Do join us for that. I think this was a very important discussion to have with the civic tech community now. And we will have this recording again on our YouTube channels. Please do see that recording there. And I imagine we'll provide some of the presentations as well for people who were on this call. Thank you so much, everybody. I also want to invite people who have not registered for the Civic Tech Innovation Forum. Snitlanka is going to put up the link to a registration for that forum happening in Johannesburg in October this year. Please do join us for that conference. Looking forward to meeting our community again. Every time people come down to South Africa to this conference, it's an amazing time. We get to connect and collaborate and learn from each other. That link is up on the chat there. Do click and register to join us in October this year. I see Melissa. Kira, yeah. Okay, cool. Kira has a question there, so we'll let you say something, Kira. But that's that from me. Over to you, Kira.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity, Philip. Thank you so much for that presentation. This is not Kira; it's actually Charlene. But Kira helped me join the call when I desperately needed to join. I have a question. It may not be really related to the games, Philip, But there's this situation where you log onto different websites, maybe trying to apply for opportunities or even just trying to read up on different universities. And the first thing they ask you is to accept cookies, essential cookies, and all these kinds of things. And sometimes you can't actually access any information until you accept. Some websites have the opportunity of completely denying, but I've really never understood what it is about. And I imagine you have more information about that. How can we go about it? Because many times I find myself accepting. And in accepting, I do not know what I'm consenting to. So I don't know if you talked about it before, but I would like to have some information on how to go about that, Philip. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene, for joining. Good to hear from you. So you're simply accepting cookies, no. But anyway, the idea for cookies is, again, for the technical people, I've been in a room where it's been explained from like a technical perspective. But what I know and what you should know is that cookies are not harmful. So cookies are normally used to enhance your user experience as a user of this platform. For example, if it's an online store and you're trying to order something and you keep visiting the store, every time you accept cookies, it is the back end, or they're collecting data on what are your interests as a person, so that next time they improve the user experience of that platform. That's my understanding of it. So I don't think cookies are any harmful, but they should be optional. On most platforms, again, they're options. Some others they are not, but they should be optional. But every time you accept cookies, you're simply allowing the platform that you're trying to use, whether it's an online shopping platform, whether it's an opportunities platform, to enhance your user experience and customize an experience for you. So I'm going to give an example. So if you like bags and you're going to maybe Alibaba or the very many platforms that you use for shopping, if you like bags and there's a certain maybe brand that you're interested in, and every time you visit the website, maybe that's the brand that you're looking at. Every time you accept cookies, it is them collecting the data on which places are you navigating to help you improve your user experience, so that next time when you come back to the website, it will simply be in your face. You won't have to struggle to navigate through the very many filters and everything that is on the website. Yeah, that is what cookies are.
Okay, thank you. That's clear. Thank you.
All right, lovely. If there's any other questions before we close, we'll take those. Or you can sort of send us an email and we'll respond, or we'll send them to Philip to respond to those questions. Send us an email at info@civictech.africa. That's info@civictech.africa, and we'll forward it to Philip, and he will respond to those. Outside of any other questions, we will close this session. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.
All right.